Today we are making custom stylus decal from scratch in Substance Designer and then projecting it in Unreal Engine 5 using a decal actor. So let's start from Substance Designer. Let's create a new substance graph. We're gonna use only 3 outputs: the base color, normal and opacity. You can remove the rest of the outputs, we don't need them at the moment. We are missing the opacity output, so you can add the output node by clicking on the output button, or you can just click right mouse button in the substance graph and type output in the search bar, or you can press spacebar and search for the output. Press right mouse button in the substance graph or spacebar and search for the cells 2 node. Change the edge width to make the edges thinner and also scale them down. The cells node is great to create some basic cracks or holes. Grab the output pin from the cells node with left mouse button and then drop it and type blend to create the blend node. We're gonna use the blend node to mask out the cracks with our hole mask, but we need to create the mask first. The blend node takes 2 input maps, the foreground and the background, and blends them using a blending mode plus an opacity map. In our case, using add linear dodge will smoothly blend a whole mask with the cracks without destroying them, but fading them out slightly. So click on the blend node and change the blending mode to add linear dodge. This is how I created the foreground for the blend node. Right mouse button and type shape, create the shape node and choose the pyramid as the input, because we want to create a square shape hole in the wall. If you want, you can use different shape, if you want different shape of the hole. And now we're gonna create the slope blur, grayscale, right mouse button, type slope blur, and then connect your shape to the grayscale input in the slope blur grayscale. So it will be affected by the noise that we are just adding. And we're gonna use the parallel noise. It has to be connected to the slope input. Slope blur takes my shape and smears it along the slopes of the noise. If the effect looks too harsh or messy, I lower intensity or try a smoother noise. To finish, I add a levels after the slope blur and increase contrast. That steepens the gradient so the light to dark transition is crisper. Think about it as a firming up the soft blur into a more defined height. The trick is to use noise to guide erosion, then levels to harden the results. Select any unused nodes and clean up the graph. Connect your blend node to the normal node. Use higher intensity, like 9 in my case, and use DirectX because we're gonna use it for Unreal Engine 5, switch to OpenGL if you want to use the normal map in Unity. I will now show you how I created the next few nodes. So I started with a bevel node, so add a bevel node and change the distance to get softer look. And then we're gonna invert the grayscale. So right mouse button or spacebar, type invert grayscale. That flips the height. So the dark areas are the cavities. When this becomes the normal map, those dark areas will become holes in the wall. Tiny holes you see around the big hole come from the cells node that we created at the beginning of the tutorial. Let's add a slope blur. And we're gonna create also the fractal sum base noise to control the slope effect in the slope blur. So let's add that and connect it to the slope input in the slope blur. If you double click the slope blur, you can see very noisy result, and even if we increase the samples count, it doesn't help, and we will need to decrease the resolution of the fractal base noise to create a more stylized and smoother look. After we've decreased the resolution of the noise, the result of this slope blur is a lot more stylized, and this is what we wanted. So here's how I created the emissive map. It's a very simple graph, but I will create it from scratch for you so you understand how it was done. I use the main height map we created. I add a ambient occlusion HBAO node. So let's add ambient occlusion. So let's create the ambient occlusion now. Spacebar, ambient occlusion, HBAO, and plug your height map, your main height map into the HBAO, and then we're gonna add levels. So first I run the height through ambient occlusion, then levels and a histogram scan. Press the invert button in the levels settings to mask out just the cavity part of the height map. so we can use it for the emissive rim. I'm doing that to isolate a clean rim. Levels node gives me control over the range, and histogram scan lets me choose how thick and sharp that fake depth effect in the emissive map looks. We have to add the histogram scan, also drag and drop, type histogram scan. We're gonna use it to create this emissive effect inside to give it more depth. And now we're gonna create the blend node and plug both colors, and the mask will control the purple color, as you can see in my example. So this is how the mask looks, and this is the result of the blend node. So let's create the blend node. Spacebar, blend, plug your mask into the opacity. It will control the purple color, the foreground. The white parts will control the foreground, and for the background we will use black color, because in our case this is an emissive map, so we don't need any emissive information in the background. And then we need to use the histogram scan to add the very subtle depth effect inside our emissive map. And then we're gonna add tiny, very subtle swell effect to our emissive map to give it some nice dynamic look. So let's add blend. We're gonna use screen in the blending mode, so it only affects the bright spots. That result goes straight to the emissive output. In engine, I will bump the emissive intensity and let bloom do the rest. So let's add histogram scan to our opacity input. It will be controlling the uniform color. I drag from the normal node's output to create a dot node. We'll use it as a portal between the normal node and the curvature smooth. Choose dot node to create the end of the portal. Choose the portal name. Name your portal so you can access it in the curvature smooth input that we've created in the normal map output in the Dropbox menu. If you want to learn more basics, let me know in the comments below and tell me what else would you like to learn. Thanks. So now let's create the base color map. In the first method, I use uniform color to overlay curvature smooth gradient map. Plug curvature smooth into a gradient map to control the gradient. I made the bright areas a bit darker and I plug it into the background input of the blend node. I then create the uniform color node and plug it into the foreground of the blend node with overlay blending mode on. This allows us to quickly tint our curvature smooth to quickly iterate. In the second method, I used the gradient map to control the colors of the curvature smooth. And in this case, I don't need any blend node because I create colors using the gradient map node. It may not be as easy to change the colors as with the previous approach, but it gives a lot more control over the colors. If you're happy with the results, plug it into the base color output and it's ready to be exported to Unreal Engine 5. And now it's ready to be exported to Unreal Engine 5. And in Unreal Engine 5, I'm gonna show you how to set up your master material and how to create instance materials so you can control your master material parameters inside your instance materials. If you have any problems with your base color texture, try checking sRGB if it's on. Also, make sure it's 8-bit per channel, C8, And when exporting, check sRGB, and you can try to use TGA if you have any problems with PNG. It should look similar to the base color in Substance Designer. Now we're gonna switch to Unreal Engine 5 to add the decal we've just created to the scene. So remember to be in the selection mode, as you can see on the screen. Press quickly add to the project button and then type decal. Drag and drop decal actor to the scene. Now let's explain some of the decal actor settings. The wireframe box is the bounce, the arrow is the projection direction. Anything inside the box gets the decal. Aim the arrow at the wall and scale down the box to fit the area I want. Make the size of the box tight so it doesn't affect the area around it. So it only affects the wall or the other object that you want the decal to affect. You can rotate, scale and move your decal actor by using the regular Unreal Engine controls W, E and R. If your decal is black, you may need to fix it by changing the value of your scale from the negative to positive, as you can see in my example. As you can see, we need to add a material for the decal actor. So let's create a master material that we're gonna use to create instance materials. Press Ctrl spacebar to open the content browser and then press right mouse button in the content browser to create a new material from the list. Name your master material and then open it to create a new material graph that we're gonna use to control instance materials. Press Ctrl spacebar in the material graph to open the content browser. Select your textures that we've just imported from Substance Designer and drag and drop them into the material graph. We cannot connect our opacity map into the opacity input because we have to change the material settings. So click the empty space in the material graph to enable material details tab. We're gonna use deferred decal material with translucent blend mode. Now we can connect our opacity map to the opacity input. drag and drop your base color node, and we're gonna add contrast so you can have more control in your instances, so you can make small adjustments to the base color. Add a constant to the second input and duplicate. Right mouse button on each constant and convert to a parameter. When you do that, it will allow us to adjust the settings of each parameter inside each instanced material. Connect your base color to the first input of the contrast node and connect your contrast node to the base color. And do the same for the opacity, but connect your opacity map to the contrast and the contrast to the opacity input. And for the emissive map, we're gonna use static switch node. It will switch between enabled and disabled. So if it's true, the emissive is enabled, and if it's false, the emissive will be disabled. And we'll use static boolean parameter to switch between true and false in our instance material. So you will be able to switch it whenever you want. And your master material is finished. Now go to the content browser, press right mouse button on your master material and create an instance of this master material. Double click on the instance material and activate parameters you want to use in this case. The best way is to create a master material and then create instances. And use instances in your game. You can create new instanced materials based on your master material and change some of the parameters to create new variations of your master material. Emissive and ambient occlusion maps are treated as special cases in DECAL materials, such as the one that we are creating. They never use the debuffer system, and they add draw calls. And they do deferred blending to either scene color or screen space ambient occlusion. So here's the final result. You can fully control inside your instanced material. Thanks for hanging out. I hope you learned something cool today. If you have any cool ideas or tips, let me know in the comment section down below. I hope you have a great day. See you in the next one.